All right, let's get right into it. If you're a leader, you know this feeling. You make a huge decision, everyone in the room is nodding, and you walk out thinking, yes, we finally did it. But then, a few weeks go by, and you find yourself right back in that same room, having the exact same conversation. So we're going to break down why this happens, the hidden flaws that cause this cycle, and show you how to build decisions that actually stick.
Does this sound familiar to you? That weird feeling of decision déjà vu? You know, the big project you all agreed on in January is suddenly up for reevaluation in February? And by March, it's mysteriously paused for more clarity. Look, you are not alone. This is probably one of the most draining, frustrating cycles in any company.
And this quote just absolutely nails it. The real cost here isn't just the hours you spend in that third meeting. It's the lost momentum, it's the wasted money, and it's the trust that just evaporates every single time you have to refight a battle you thought you'd already won. It's a massive, invisible tax on your company's ability to do anything. So what is actually going on here? Well, this feeling of being busy but going nowhere is called strategic thrash. It looks and feels like you're being agile, you're responding to new information, but what's really happening is the company is just spinning its wheels in the mud. Let's unpack that. You know, the first mistake most of us make is thinking this is a people problem. We think, oh, the team just isn't disciplined enough, or they lack follow-through. But the real issue here isn't about willpower at all. The problem is literally built into the structure of how you make decisions in the first place. And this is such a great way to picture the difference. Real agility is when you build on a solid foundation. Every decision becomes another brick, and your progress starts to compound. But strategic thrash? That's like constantly tearing up the foundation to pour it again. You're super busy, sure, but you're not actually going anywhere. So the fix for this, and this is really the core idea of this whole explainer, is something called decision durability. And here's the big mental shift you have to make. A durable decision isn't something you get from a friendly handshake or everyone agreeing in a meeting. No, it's an architectural property. You have to engineer it from the very beginning to be strong enough to withstand pressure. Okay, so let's dig into the root cause. This is where so many well-meaning collaborative companies go wrong. They fall into the consensus trap. They think getting everybody in the room to nod their heads is the same thing as making a final binding decision. It is not. Because what you end up with are these conditional approvals. The plan is approved provided that sales is okay with it, or assuming engineering doesn't run into problems. Every single one of those little phrases is an invisible trapdoor. It gives anyone an easy escape hatch the second things get tough. It basically tells the entire company, hey, this isn't a real decision, it's just an experiment. And this is the whole point. A real decision, a durable one, means you are closing doors. It's the official transition from the deliberation phase, where you're exploring options, to the execution phase, where you are not. Companies that thrash around never truly leave that deliberation phase. Okay, we've talked a lot about the problem. So how do we actually fix it? Well, it all comes down to a framework built on 3 structural pillars. And these aren't just nice ideas, they are the absolute architectural requirements for any decision that you want to last. Here they are. Pillar 1, singular authority. Now, this is not about being a dictator, it's about clarity. One person and one person only is accountable. That's how you avoid death by committee. Pillar 2, explicit scope. You clearly define the boundaries of the decision so it can't be slowly chipped away at by exceptions. And Pillar 3, this one is the real game changer, the irreversible threshold. You decide, up front, the only new data that would be significant enough to even consider reversing the decision. This closes all those subjective trapdoors for good. Theory is one thing, but let's look at what happens in the real world when these pillars are missing. The story of a company called FinTech Prime is just a perfect cautionary tale of a decision that looks solid on the surface but was really built on sand. So here's the situation. FinTech Prime has this old, clunky platform that's holding the whole business back. So they have a big leadership offsite in Q1, and everyone agrees on the sunset strategy, a plan to get rid of it within a year. Everyone's on board, full consensus. Sounds like a done deal, right? Oh, not even close. Watch how fast this thing falls apart. In Q2, just a few months later, the chief revenue officer gets nervous about losing big clients, so he quietly renews their contracts on the old platform. By Q3, the CTO has to stop the new work to go back and support the old code that was supposed to be dead. The entire decision was completely reversed, and they never even had a meeting about it. And here is the absolute kicker. When leadership finally figured out what happened, their diagnosis was poor communication.
but it had nothing to do with communication. It was a total failure of decision architecture. That decision they made back in Q1, it had no singular authority and zero irreversible threshold. It was doomed from the start.
And a failure like that isn't just frustrating. It has huge, tangible costs that hit your bottom line and, maybe even worse, crush your team's morale. Let's look at the real price you pay for all this strategic thrash.
It's called the strategy tax. Think about it. It's the total cost of all the projects you start, pour money and energy into, and then abandon before they ever create any value. You're basically paying to set up a bunch of different strategies, but you never stick with one long enough to get any of the reward. It's just destroying capital and calling it a pivot.
And this chart really shows the long-term impact. Thrashco makes a little progress, then stops, starts something else, stops again. They never build momentum. Meanwhile, Durable Inc. just keeps stacking one win on top of the next, and their progress compounds like crazy. This is how your competitors can just blow past you, not because they're smarter, but because they simply make a decision and stick to it. So which company's progress chart looks more like yours? But the highest cost of all might be this: the erosion of your credibility as a leader. When your decisions are always changing, your best, smartest people, they learn to just ignore you. They learn that your big announcements don't really mean anything. So they wait. They wait to see if a strategy is actually going to stick this time before they pour their energy into it. And that is absolutely fatal for your speed of execution.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. How do you actually get out of this mess? The key is to stop treating an architectural problem with flimsy procedural band-aids. You have to change the system itself.
Look, our first instinct is always to reach for things like RACI charts or more meetings or detailed decision logs. But those are weak fixes. A RACI chart isn't going to stop a powerful executive who wants to undo a decision. The strong fix, the real fix, is architectural. You redesign authority. You set those reversal thresholds. You make it structurally difficult and politically costly to reopen a decision that's already been closed.
So if there is one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. If your company is trapped in this cycle of decision déjà vu, you do not have an execution problem. Your people aren't failing at follow-through. What you have is a fundamental governance failure, right at the very top.
And that really just leaves one final crucial question you have to ask yourself. When you announce a new strategy, is it a command that the organization must follow and adapt to? Or is it really just a suggestion, a good idea that's just waiting for the first bit of resistance to wash it all away? Because the answer to that question will define the future of your company.